So this here is the inwin 101, a $70 inwin case. That's pretty cool because usually inwin cases tip like the $100 plus range and go all the way up to like $1,500. So this is a budget case in relative terms to inwin because I think this is the lowest priced case they have available. The recent incarnation, the 301, I think was another budget oriented case in their respects, which was around $90 and had some thermal issues. This one may have addressed that, as well as lowering the price $20. And I'm going to go into the review about the ins and outs of what makes this case just so freaking awesome. So let's get into it. Hey, what's up guys? My name is JD from JDTechGear and welcome back to the channel where we discuss PC, passion, tech reviews, unboxings, and setup design. So if you're into that sort of thing, consider subscribing and checking out the rest of the channel. So the inwin 101 is an ATX case that is available in black and white, and it has a tempered glass window panel that is slightly tinted. It's not too tinted. It looks actually pretty nice. Tinted is up to preference, but personally I like the tinted aspect. But it has a smaller form factor and footprint than some other mid-tower cases. It's 445mm tall, 220mm wide, and 480mm long. Compatibility is pretty good for the space offered since it supports a GPU length up to 421mm and a CPU heatsink height of 160mm. Fan and radiator support is very good, with room for a 120mm fan or radiator in the rear, two 120mm fans or two 40mm radiator on the side, and three 120mm fans or one 360mm rad on the bottom. And the power supply has clearance up to 200mm. The case has tempered glass and the entire case is made out of metal, but it's relatively light considering the fact, coming in at 16.2 pounds or 7.35 kilograms. The front I/O has two USB 3.0 ports and a headphone and mic jack. The power button is located on the front underneath the inwin logo. There is no reset button. The inwin logo illuminates with a blue LED to make it stand out, and it looks pretty cool. Okay, so everything about this case is superb quality with a full metal design as mentioned before, and tempered glass of course. Although I have to give it to inwin. They've created the easiest side panel to work with I've experienced so far. All you have to do is pull on the black tabs on the top and unhinge the side panel and pull it off. I'm not sure if it can get much easier than that. Very easy to handle and work with. The rear panel is also a dream and follows a similar design. Simply unscrew the top two screws and unhinge. The thumb screws are fixed to the case and don't come entirely out, so you won't have to be looking for them later in case the screws actually did come all the way out, like with some other cases. Inside the case, everything is wide open. There's support for an ATX, micro ATX, and mini ATX board, although the bottom cable cutouts get blocked off with an ATX board. There's two hard drive bays up top with a hinge mechanism. Make sure the tray is all the way inside to properly close the hinge. On the back, there's two SSD trays which unscrew with one thumbnail. For any fans being mounted on the side, there's a removable tray to install fans independently from the chassis. Removal is easy with two screws on top and one screw on bottom. The intake fans are supposed to be on the bottom of the case, in which there is a removable dust filter. You can mount a radiator to the side panel, but it can cause some potential clearance issues. For me, in my experience, I installed the Master Liquid 120 on the side panel, and I couldn't sit the radiator flush to the case wall since the LED housing for the inwin logo got in the way. I managed to install with some longer screws, but not everyone will have longer screws with the correct width at their disposal. For the I/O shield installation, it was a new one for me. To install it, set the I/O shield on the bottom lip and snap it into place on the upper lip. This can be a bit tedious at first, but it is secure and allows for some sliding to adjust to the motherboard. There's also an included GPU bracket, which is pretty awesome. There's two slots to run alongside the PCIe lanes, and depending on the length of the GPU determines which slot you would use. Installation is easy with screwing in two screws from the rear of the case to secure in the GPU bracket. Cable routing is well thought out throughout the case. There's cutouts located on the bottom next to the side panel fans and another underneath the motherboard, but this one gets covered up if there is an ATX board installed. There's plenty of cable routing through the side panel on the fan mounting tray and offers individual fan cable holes alongside the fan mounts. There's also a cutout on top next to the power supply, which can be routed for the CPU cable and such. Although if you have a larger power supply, there might be a possibility of the cutout being covered up. There's also 3/4 of an inch or about 19mm of clearance for cables in the back. most of which the cables get stuffed on top next to the power supply, so you got plenty of space. Airflow, I believe, has improved from the 301 with a cutout on the side panel directly in front of the fans for exhaust fans. The bottom fans are set up for the intake with 360 millimeters in total of room for intake fans. The power supply also exhausts the air inside the case alongside the exhaust fan on the rear. The chassis is completely open, which allows for a good amount of airflow for all the components, even if it's a smaller ATX form factor. Here's what the stress temps were for the GPU and CPU. To test for thermals, I monitored my Ryzen 1700 cooled by the Master Liquid 120 and my GTX 1070, which I left at normal fan curves. For idle temps, the Ryzen 1700 hovered around 34 degrees Celsius and the GTX 1070 was at 41 degrees Celsius. Then I stressed the 1070 with Furmark and stressed the 1700 with CPU-Z. The 1700 stayed at 63.35 degrees and the 1070 burned in at 73 degrees. For reference, the 1070 reached at 75 degrees in my Phanteks Intel Pro, which has a lot of airflow. So these numbers are quite respectable. Then I clocked a 1700 to 3.7 GHz. At idle it averaged at 45.23 degrees and under load it reached 67 degrees. To further evaluate the case, I took off both side panels and the CPU temp dropped to 62.75 degrees. The GPU stress temp remained the same with the side panels on and off, so that didn't make any difference. So inwin did a good job with more of a focus on airflow, I feel like, with this case compared to the 301, and I really appreciate that. Overall, this is a really good case and a pleasure to work with. I'm ecstatic that inwin took a case in an expensive direction compared to their other cases without sacrificing quality. The case is easy to build with except for the clearance issue with the radiator on the side panel. Cable management is plentiful, and I stuffed this PC with a lot of cables. I have cable extensions, 7 fans, 2 RGB strips with a separate power connector, a fan hub, and all the included components. So yeah, it's packed to the brim, but the cable management is on point. I would have liked to see some rubber grommets in this case, even if it is an inexpensive inwin alternative. Rubber grommets are available on other cases in this price bracket. And you also must be aware of the cable cutout on the bottom for ATX boards gets blocked. Airflow and temps are pretty good with this case, which is essential to check for. The tempered glass panel and rear panel are incredibly easy to work with, and the entire case is beautiful and well made. The case is very well rounded in many aspects with very few negatives, and it manages to do all this while at a slightly smaller ATX form factor. This case is perfect for placing on top of a desk with a smaller footprint and shows off your hardware at the same time. For $70 US, I really like this case and I highly recommend it for those looking to show off their hardware with a sleek ATX case designed to show off your PC. I mean, talking out of the script, I really have enjoyed this case, and I've had it since July, and the more I worked with it, the more I liked it. And with the side panels just coming off so easily really adds to the building experience and the ease of use with this case, let alone its smaller ATX form factor, which you would think would hinder the performance or building experience. So it doesn't. It's really a good case. So I hope you all enjoyed the review and found it helpful. And if you're new here, consider subscribing and checking out the rest of the channel for more videos like this one. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.